$20 million a year, total control over every player on the roster, the power to handpick his own general manager, and a $10 million budget just for his coaching staff. When John Harbaugh's list of demands leaked to the public, NFL owners across the league started sweating. This wasn't some desperate coordinator begging for his first head coaching gig. This was a Super Bowl champion drawing a line in the sand and telling billion-dollar franchises exactly what it would cost to get him. Most people saw these demands and laughed. They called him delusional. They said no team would ever agree to give one man that much power. But here's what everyone missed. These demands weren't random. They weren't about ego. They were calculated, strategic, and aimed directly at one specific situation that could change the entire trajectory of the NFL. The Cleveland Browns, Shedeur Sanders, and a chance to build something nobody has ever seen before. What happens when a Hall of Fame coach sees the perfect opportunity and decides he's done compromising? What happens when desperation meets preparation? You're about to find out. 18 years. That's how long John Harbaugh ran the Baltimore Ravens. 18 seasons of competing in one of the toughest divisions in football. 18 years of battles against the Steelers, the Bengals, and the Browns. 18 years of building one of the most respected franchises in professional sports. And then it was over. The AFC North Championship game against Pittsburgh was supposed to be a coronation. Baltimore came in riding high, with Lamar Jackson playing at an MVP level and the defense looking as dangerous as ever. The city was buzzing. Playoff expectations were through the roof. This was supposed to be the year everything finally came together. Instead, it all fell apart under the Sunday night lights. The Ravens lost, and before the locker room even cleared out, whispers started circulating. Something was wrong. Something had been brewing for months behind closed doors. Reports started leaking almost immediately. Harbaugh wanted to run it back with his current staff. He believed in the guys he had. He trusted the coordinators, the position coaches, the entire infrastructure he'd spent years building. The organization disagreed. They wanted changes. They wanted new voices. They wanted a different direction. And just like that, the marriage was over. Now, most people expected this might happen eventually. Harbaugh's playoff record had become a talking point. Despite regular season success, the postseason disappointments were stacking up. Critics pointed to the losses, the missed opportunities, the games that slipped away when it mattered most. But nobody expected it to happen this fast. The common assumption was that Harbaugh had at least one more year, maybe two. If the playoff struggles continued next season, then sure, conversations would happen. Decisions would be made. But this year, after everything he'd done for the franchise, the timing caught everyone off guard. Here's what most fans don't realize about the NFL coaching carousel. It's never just about wins and losses. It's about relationships. It's about power dynamics. It's about who controls the direction of the franchise and who gets to make the final call when disagreements arise. Harbaugh and the Ravens front office had been on different pages for a while. The staff situation was just the breaking point. Years of tension, philosophical differences, and competing visions for the future all came to a head at the worst possible moment. And when the dust settled, one of the most successful coaches in franchise history was suddenly looking for a new job. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn. Harbaugh didn't just start calling teams and begging for interviews. He didn't send out feelers through agents trying to gauge interest. He didn't do what most fired coaches do, which is humble themselves and hope someone gives them another chance. Instead, he did the opposite. He released a list of demands so aggressive, so detailed, so unprecedented that it made headlines across every sports network in the country. He essentially told every owner in the league exactly what it would cost to hire him. And if they weren't willing to pay that price, he wasn't interested in talking. This wasn't desperation. This was strategy. See, Harbaugh understood something that most people overlooked in the chaos of Black Monday. He understood that despite the playoff failures, despite the tension with Baltimore, despite everything critics were saying about him, he was still one of the most accomplished coaches available. 18 years at one franchise is almost unheard of in modern football. Only Mike Tomlin can match that kind of longevity. A Super Bowl ring, consistent winning seasons, a track record of developing talent and keeping his team competitive year after year. That resume carries weight, serious weight. So when Harbaugh put together his list of demands, he wasn't being arrogant. He was being realistic. He knew that somewhere out there, a team was desperate enough, hungry enough, and smart enough to give him everything he wanted. He just had to find them. And according to multiple insiders, including ESPN's Cleveland reporter Tony Grossi, one team was already listening very carefully: the Cleveland Browns, a franchise drowning in dysfunction, an owner who had finally been humbled by years of failure, a young quarterback waiting to be developed, and a fan base starving for anyone, to come in and finally get it right. The pieces were falling into place. The connection between Harbaugh and Cleveland wasn't just speculation anymore. It was becoming increasingly real. But before we dive into why Cleveland makes so much sense, we need to understand exactly what Harbaugh is asking for and why each demand matters more than anyone realizes. Let's get specific. Because when you actually break down what John Harbaugh is demanding, you start to see a pattern. This isn't a random wish list. This is a master plan. $20 million per year. That number alone sent shockwaves through the league. Currently, only one coach in the NFL makes that kind of money: Andy Reid. And Andy Reid has earned every single penny of that contract through 6 Super Bowl appearances, 3 championships, and 6 consecutive AFC Championship game appearances. Harbaugh's resume, by comparison, includes 1 Super Bowl victory back in the 2012 season. That's over a decade ago. Critics immediately jumped on this discrepancy. They argued that Harbaugh hasn't accomplished enough in recent years to justify that salary. But here's what those critics are missing. Harbaugh isn't just asking for money. He's using the salary demand as a filter. He's essentially saying that if your organization isn't willing to invest at the highest level, you're not serious about winning. He's weeding out the franchises that want a bargain coach, a yes man, someone they can control. $20 million signals commitment. It tells Harbaugh that the organization values elite coaching and is willing to put its money where its mouth is. Now let's talk about that $10 million staff budget. Most casual fans don't realize how expensive it is to build a championship-caliber coaching staff. Your offensive coordinator alone might cost $1 million to $1.5 million. Your defensive coordinator could run even higher, especially if you're targeting someone with head coaching experience or a proven track record. Then you've got position coaches, quarterback coaches, offensive line coaches, defensive backs coaches, linebackers coaches, special teams coordinators, quality control assistants, analysts. The list goes on and on. $10 million sounds like a lot until you actually do the math. Then you realize it's barely enough to compete with the top organizations in the league, but here's the crucial detail. By demanding a specific staff budget up front, Harbaugh is ensuring that he won't have to compromise on hiring. He won't have to settle for second-tier coordinators because the organization wanted to save money. He gets to build his dream staff without budget constraints holding him back. That's not greed, that's smart planning. Now we get to the really interesting demands. Total authority over the roster, not input, not collaboration, not a seat at the table. Total authority over the final 53-man roster. This is where things get serious. In most NFL organizations, the general manager controls personnel decisions. The coach gives input, makes recommendations, and lobbies for certain players. But ultimately, the GM has final say on who makes the team. Harbaugh wants that dynamic flipped entirely. He's demanding the power to decide who stays and who goes. No front office interference. No owner meddling. His team, his decisions, his responsibility. Why does this matter so much? Because Harbaugh has seen what happens when coaches and front offices aren't aligned. He's seen talented coaches get fired because the GM built the wrong roster. He's seen championship windows close because personnel decisions were made by people who didn't understand what the coach actually needed. By demanding roster control, Harbaugh eliminates that problem entirely. If the team succeeds, it's because of his decisions. If the team fails, he has nobody to blame but himself. There's total accountability and total authority in one package. And finally, the most controversial demand of all. He wants to select his own general manager, not work with the existing GM, not have a say in the hiring process. He wants to personally choose the person who will handle contracts, draft logistics, and salary cap management. Most people hear this and think Harbaugh is crazy. They think he's asking for too much power. They worry about checks and balances and organizational structure. But think about it from Harbaugh's perspective. He's been in the league long enough to know that coach-GM relationships make or break franchises. When the coach and GM are aligned, magic happens. When they're fighting, everything falls apart. By selecting his own GM, Harbaugh guarantees alignment. He picks someone who shares his vision, understands his philosophy, and will work with him rather than against him. It's not about ego. It's about eliminating the conflicts that destroy coaching tenures before they ever have a chance to succeed. When you put all four demands together, a clear picture emerges. Harbaugh isn't trying to become a dictator. He's trying to create the conditions necessary for sustained success. He's learned from 18 years in Baltimore what works and what doesn't. He's seen how front office interference, budget limitations, and misaligned personnel decisions can undermine even the best coaching. And he's decided that his next job will be different. He's done compromising. He's done navigating politics. He's done hoping that ownership and management will support him. Either give him what he needs to win or don't bother calling. That's the message. And one organization in particular seems ready to receive it. An organization that's learned the hard way what happens when you do things wrong. An organization that's finally desperate enough to try something radically different. The Cleveland Browns. To understand why Cleveland might actually agree to Harbaugh's demands, you need to understand the dumpster fire they've been living in for the past several years. It all starts with one name, Deshaun Watson. The Browns were desperate. Absolutely, completely, embarrassingly desperate for a franchise quarterback. They had cycled through starter after starter, watching division rivals find their guys while Cleveland kept spinning its wheels. Then Watson became available. Now, there were red flags everywhere. Serious allegations had surfaced. Multiple lawsuits were pending. The NFL was investigating. Any reasonable organization would have approached this situation with extreme caution. Cleveland threw caution out the window. They traded multiple first-round draft picks to Houston. They gave up future assets that could have built a contender for years to come. And then they handed Watson the largest guaranteed contract in NFL history, $230 million, fully guaranteed. Every single penny. The logic, if you can call it that, was simple. Watson had been elite in Houston. He was young. He was talented. He could be the answer to decades of quarterback misery. It blew up spectacularly. Watson got hurt. When he played, he looked nothing like the quarterback who had terrorized defenses in Houston. The chemistry wasn't there. The timing was off. The explosiveness that made him special seemed to have vanished. And Cleveland was stuck with the most expensive mistake in franchise history. But the Watson disaster wasn't just about the money or the draft picks. It revealed something much deeper about how the Browns organization operated. It showed that ownership was willing to make reckless decisions based on desperation rather than sound judgment. It showed that the front office would sacrifice long-term stability for short-term hope. It showed that the entire organization was broken from the top down. And here's where it gets really interesting. Reports started emerging about how Cleveland treated its previous coaches. According to insiders, head coaches were required to submit their game plans in advance, not just to the coordinators or the staff, but to the analytics department. Every decision scrutinized, every play call questioned, every strategic choice filtered through people who had never coached a game in their lives. Imagine being a head coach in that environment. Imagine trying to prepare for a crucial game while executives are second-guessing your decisions before you even step on the field. Is it any wonder that Cleveland couldn't keep quality coaches? Is it any wonder that talented coordinators avoided the job like it was radioactive? The Browns had created an environment where no self-respecting coach could succeed. They had built a system designed to undermine the very people they hired to lead the team. And then they acted surprised when everything kept falling apart. Jimmy Haslam, the owner, became the face of this dysfunction. Year after year, he meddled. He interfered. He fired coaches before they had a chance to build anything sustainable. He made decisions based on impatience rather than strategy. The result was predictable: a revolving door of coaches, coordinators, and general managers. Constant turnover, zero continuity. And a fan base that had completely lost faith in the organization. But something changed after the Watson catastrophe. For the first time, it seemed like Haslam actually understood what he had done wrong. The Watson trade wasn't just a bad decision. It was a humiliating, public failure that exposed everything broken about how Cleveland operated. You can't spend $230 million guaranteed dollars going up in smoke. You can't explain away multiple first-round picks wasted on a quarterback who couldn't perform. You can't hide from that kind of disaster. And according to people close to the organization, Haslam finally got the message. He finally understood that his way doesn't work. That meddling destroys coaches. that analytics departments shouldn't be approving game plans, that owners need to step back and let football people make football decisions. This is why Harbaugh's demands suddenly make sense for Cleveland. 5 years ago, if a coach had walked into Haslam's office and demanded $20 million, total roster control, and the power to select his own GM, he would have been laughed out of the building. Today, after everything that's happened, after the Watson nightmare exposed every flaw in the organization, Haslam might actually say yes. Because what's the alternative? Keep doing things the same way? Keep meddling. Keep cycling through coaches every 2 years? Keep watching the Steelers and Ravens compete for championships while Cleveland wallows in mediocrity? That's not a plan. That's insanity. Harbaugh represents something Cleveland has never had: a proven winner who refuses to compromise, a coach who will demand excellence and won't tolerate interference, someone with the credibility and the resume to tell ownership exactly how things are going to work. And if Cleveland has learned anything from the Watson disaster, they've learned that desperation can be channeled productively. Instead of throwing money at a quarterback with massive question marks, throw resources at a coach who knows exactly what he needs to succeed. Give Harbaugh everything he wants. Step back. Let him build something real. It might be the smartest decision the Browns have made in decades, but Harbaugh's demands aren't just about fixing Cleveland's organizational dysfunction. They're about something much more specific: a young quarterback waiting to be developed. Every great coaching opportunity needs the right quarterback. Harbaugh knows this better than anyone. He won his Super Bowl with Joe Flacco, a quarterback who got scorching hot at exactly the right moment. He spent years developing Lamar Jackson, turning a player many doubted into a 2-time MVP. He understands that in today's NFL, you don't win championships with game managers and safe veterans. You need that guy, the franchise-altering talent who can carry your team when everything else breaks down. And that's where Shedeur Sanders enters the picture. Before we go any further, let's address the elephant in the room. Shedeur comes with baggage. His father is Deion Sanders, one of the most famous and controversial figures in football history. The media circus follows wherever the Sanders family goes. The hot takes never stop. The scrutiny is relentless. But strip away the noise, and what do you actually have? You have a quarterback with legitimate first-round talent who fell in the draft because of perception, not ability. You have a player who's been battle-tested in ways most college quarterbacks never experience. You have someone who's handled pressure, media attention, and sky-high expectations since he was a teenager. That's not a weakness. That's preparation. Let's talk about the actual football player. Shedeur's release is lightning quick. In a league where milliseconds determine whether a pass arrives on time or ends up intercepted, his ability to get the ball out fast is invaluable. Defensive coordinators can bring pressure all day long, but if the quarterback is releasing before the rush arrives, it doesn't matter. His accuracy is elite, not good, not promising. Elite. He consistently puts the ball exactly where it needs to be, giving his receivers chances to make plays after the catch. He's not a gunslinger who relies on arm strength to compensate for poor placement. He's a precision passer who picks defenses apart, and his pre-snap processing might be his most underrated trait. Shedeur reads defenses at the line of scrimmage better than most college quarterbacks ever do. He identifies coverages, adjusts protections, and knows where his hot routes are before the ball is even snapped. These aren't traits you teach. These are traits you develop over years of high-level quarterback play. Now let's trace his journey. Shedeur started at Jackson State, an FCS program that most casual fans had never heard of before Deion Sanders arrived. He didn't have the facilities that Power 5 quarterbacks enjoy. He didn't have 5-star recruits surrounding him. He had to win with less, and he did, consistently. Then came the Colorado transfer. The Buffaloes were coming off one of the worst seasons in program history. They were a complete rebuild. Most quarterbacks with Shedeur's talent would have transferred somewhere stable, somewhere with an established offensive line and proven receivers. Shedeur chose the hard path. He carried that offense on his back. He took hits behind a struggling line. He made throws into tight windows because his receivers couldn't create separation. He did everything possible to give Colorado a chance to win, even when the roster around him wasn't ready. That experience matters. It shows character. It shows resilience. It shows a willingness to embrace challenges rather than avoid them. And now he's in Cleveland, drafted by an organization in chaos, waiting to see if anyone is actually committed to developing him. Think about what Shedeur represents for a coach like John Harbaugh. He's young enough to be molded. He hasn't spent years in a terrible NFL system picking up bad habits. He hasn't been ruined by coaches who didn't understand how to use his strengths. He's essentially a blank canvas with elite tools. For a veteran coach who demands roster control and wants to build an organization his way, that's the dream scenario. Give me this quarterback. Give me the power to surround him with the right pieces. Give me the staff budget to hire coordinators who specialize in quarterback development, and watch what happens. Remember what Harbaugh did with Lamar Jackson. When Lamar entered the NFL, plenty of analysts questioned whether he could play quarterback at the professional level. They called him a running back. They said his throwing motion was flawed. They doubted his ability to read NFL defenses. Harbaugh ignored all of it. He built an offense around Lamar's strengths. He constructed a roster that maximized what his quarterback did well. He gave Lamar the infrastructure to succeed and then let his talent take over. 2 MVP awards later, nobody questions whether Lamar Jackson can play quarterback. Shedeur Sanders could be the next chapter of that same story. Different skill set, different playing style, but the same principle applies. Give a talented young quarterback the right coach, the right system, the right organizational support, and watch him flourish. Harbaugh's demands aren't random. They're specifically designed to create the perfect development environment for exactly this kind of opportunity. And Cleveland, despite all its dysfunction, despite all its failures, has stumbled into the perfect position to make this happen. They have the young quarterback. They have the desperation to give up control. They have an owner who's finally been humbled enough to step back. All the pieces are there. The only question is whether Harbaugh and Cleveland can actually come together and make it work. Let's connect the dots between Harbaugh's specific demands and how each one directly benefits Shedeur Sanders' development. Start with the $20 million salary. On the surface, this seems like it's just about Harbaugh getting paid. But look deeper. That salary represents commitment. It tells the world that Cleveland is serious about building something sustainable. It signals to every player, every coordinator, every scout in the league that this organization is done cutting corners. For Shedeur, that matters enormously. Young quarterbacks need to know that their coach isn't going anywhere. They need stability. They need the confidence that comes from knowing the guy developing them will still be there in year 3, year 4, year 5. When a coach makes $8 million and has no real organizational power, he's vulnerable. One bad season and he's gone. 2 rough stretches and ownership starts looking elsewhere. The quarterback development plan gets abandoned halfway through because new coaches bring new systems and new philosophies. But when a coach makes $20 million with guaranteed years and total authority, that coach is entrenched. That coach isn't going anywhere. That quarterback can trust that whatever development plan begins in year 1 will continue through year 3 and beyond. Stability breeds confidence. Confidence breeds development. Development breeds success. Now let's examine that $10 million staff budget through the lens of quarterback development. Harbaugh can hire the best offensive coordinator in the business, not the best available coordinator, not the coordinator willing to take a discount. The absolute best person for developing a young quarterback. He can bring in a quarterback coach with a proven track record of working with young passers. Someone who understands modern footwork techniques, release point optimization, and cognitive processing development. He can hire analysts who specialize in breaking down film, identifying tendencies, and helping quarterbacks prepare for specific opponents. He can build an offensive coaching infrastructure that rivals anything in the league. For Shedeur, this means he's not learning from one person. He's learning from an entire system designed specifically to maximize his potential. Remember what we discussed about Harbaugh's Super Bowl run with Joe Flacco. Flacco was never considered an elite quarterback. He didn't have the physical tools that Shedeur possesses, but Harbaugh built an environment around him that allowed Flacco to succeed. The running game took pressure off. The defense gave him short fields. The play calling put him in positions to make throws he was comfortable with. With a $10 million staff budget and total roster control, Harbaugh can build that same kind of environment for Shedeur, except with a quarterback who has significantly more natural talent. Speaking of roster control, this is where the blueprint gets really interesting. Harbaugh can prioritize the offensive line in ways that previous Cleveland regimes never did. He can draft tackles who specialize in pass protection. He can sign veteran guards who understand how to handle interior pressure. He can create a pocket that gives Shedeur the time he needs to make decisions. He can bring in receivers who complement Shedeur's accuracy and quick release, possession receivers who win on timing routes, speed threats who can stretch the field vertically, tight ends who create mismatches in the middle of the field. Every single roster decision can be filtered through one question. Does this help Shedeur Sanders develop into a franchise quarterback? Not does this help us win games next year? Not does this satisfy the fan base? Not does this look good for the front office? Does this help our quarterback become great? That singular focus is invaluable for a young passer. It means he's not competing with organizational priorities that don't align with his development. It means resources are flowing in the direction of his success. And the GM selection ties everything together. Harbaugh picks a general manager who shares his vision. Someone who understands that quarterback development requires patience. Someone who won't pressure the coach to win immediately at the expense of long-term growth. Someone who handles the contract negotiations and salary cap logistics while Harbaugh focuses entirely on football. This alignment between coach and GM is the foundation of every successful franchise. The Patriots had it with Belichick and his front office structure. The Chiefs have it with Reid and Brett Veach. The 49ers have it with Shanahan and John Lynch. Cleveland has never had that alignment. Coaches and GMs have fought over roster decisions. Ownership has interfered with both. The result is chaos and constant turnover. Harbaugh's demands create alignment by design. If he picks the GM, there's no conflict. If he controls the roster, there's no fighting over personnel. If he has the staff budget he needs, there's no compromise on coaching quality. Everything flows in one direction. Everything supports one goal. Everything is built around developing Shedeur Sanders into the franchise quarterback Cleveland has been searching for since they came back into the league. This isn't about one man accumulating power for its own sake. This is about creating the organizational structure necessary for sustained success. Harbaugh has seen how things work when that structure doesn't exist. He's watched talented coaches fail because the pieces around them weren't aligned. He's watched promising quarterbacks get ruined by organizations that couldn't get out of their own way. He's determined to do things differently. And if Cleveland is smart enough to give him what he wants, they might finally break the cycle of failure that's defined the franchise for 2 decades. But Cleveland isn't the only team interested in Harbaugh. When Harbaugh's demands became public, speculation exploded about where he might land. The New York Giants immediately entered the conversation. The Miami Dolphins were mentioned. Some even wondered if Baltimore might somehow bring him back. But when you analyze each situation carefully, Cleveland emerges as the clear frontrunner for reasons that go beyond just the quarterback. Let's start with the Giants. New York has the 3rd pick in the draft. They have cap space. They have a defense that can compete immediately. On paper, it seems like an attractive destination. But here's the problem. The Giants' ownership has never shown the kind of desperation necessary to give one coach total control. The Mara family has run that franchise for decades. They have their way of doing things. They have their power structure. They have their organizational hierarchy. Would they really hand the keys to John Harbaugh and let him pick his own GM? Would they really step back from roster decisions and let a coach have final say? History suggests otherwise. The Giants want a coach who will work within their system, not one who demands the system be rebuilt around him. They want collaboration, not domination. They want input from ownership, not total autonomy for the head coach. Harbaugh's demands don't fit the Giants' organizational culture. Even if they made an offer, it probably wouldn't include everything Harbaugh is asking for. Now let's examine Miami. The Dolphins have Tua Tagovailoa, a quarterback who's shown flashes of brilliance but also significant concerns. The injury history is troubling. The durability questions won't go away. There's genuine uncertainty about whether Tua can stay healthy enough to lead a championship run. But here's the thing about Miami. They've already invested heavily in Tua. They've built their roster around him. They've committed resources to making him successful. Walking away from that investment would require admitting a massive organizational failure. Is Stephen Ross, the Dolphins' owner, really prepared to do that? Is he ready to let Harbaugh come in and potentially tear everything down to rebuild around a different quarterback? The political complications in Miami are enormous. Harbaugh would be inheriting someone else's mess and trying to fix it with one hand tied behind his back. That's not the clean slate he's looking for. Cleveland offers something neither New York nor Miami can match: rock-bottom desperation. The Browns aren't trying to protect previous investments. The Watson situation is already acknowledged as a catastrophe. The previous coaching staff is gone. The organizational structure is in flux. There's nothing to preserve and everything to rebuild. For a coach who wants total control, that's the perfect canvas. Jimmy Haslam has spent the last decade watching his interference destroy coaches. He's watched his meddling create dysfunction. He's watched his impatience prevent any kind of sustainable success. And he's finally, reportedly, ready to try something different. When Harbaugh walks into that building and lays out his demands, Haslam doesn't see arrogance. He sees the opposite of everything that's failed in Cleveland for 20 years. He sees a coach demanding exactly the kind of authority and autonomy that Haslam's interference has always prevented. He sees a coach willing to take total responsibility in exchange for total control. He sees someone with the credibility and resume to actually change the culture. And he sees Shedeur Sanders sitting there, waiting to be developed by exactly this kind of coach. The financial piece is simpler than people realize. Baltimore still owes Harbaugh approximately $34 million on his existing contract. That means Cleveland only needs to add around $6 million per year to get to the $20 million Harbaugh is demanding. After spending $230 million guaranteed on Deshaun Watson, $6 million annually for a Hall of Fame caliber coach is nothing. It's a rounding error. It's the kind of money the Browns have wasted on backup linebackers who never made the roster. The staff budget? Pocket change compared to the Watson disaster. The roster control. Cleveland's front office clearly doesn't know what it's doing anyway. The GM selection? Andrew Barry somehow survived the Watson trade, but maybe a fresh start is exactly what the organization needs. Everything lines up. Cleveland has the desperation. Cleveland has the young quarterback. Cleveland has the owner who's finally been humbled enough to step back. Cleveland has the financial resources to meet every demand. And most importantly, Cleveland has nothing to lose. The franchise has been a joke for 2 decades. The fan base has endured endless suffering. The organizational culture is toxic from top to bottom. What's the worst that happens if they give Harbaugh everything he wants? They fail again? They've been failing for 20 years already. At least this time they'd be failing with a plan, with a vision, with a coach who demands excellence. But what if it works? What if Harbaugh and Shedeur connect and Cleveland finally has the franchise quarterback and the coaching infrastructure to compete? What if this is the move that breaks the curse? That possibility alone is worth everything Harbaugh is asking for. This isn't just a story about one coach and one team negotiating a contract. This is a story about the future of the NFL. John Harbaugh's demands are going to change how coaches negotiate. They're going to change what franchises are willing to offer. They're going to shift the balance of power between ownership, front offices, and the men who actually lead teams on the field. And at the center of it all sits Shedeur Sanders, a young quarterback with elite talent, waiting for someone to build the right environment around him. Waiting for an organization that's actually committed to his development. Waiting for a coach who won't be undermined by meddling owners or misaligned front offices. Cleveland has failed for 2 decades because they never gave anyone the tools to succeed. Harbaugh is demanding those tools before he even walks through the door. If the Browns are smart enough to say yes, everything changes. Not just for Cleveland, not just for Shedeur, but for the entire league. The question isn't whether Harbaugh's demands are reasonable. The question is whether Cleveland is finally ready to do things right.